all this stuff.
Why $2 million in cash?
Because I'm going to start throwing lots of money at lots of people.
Bribing people?
Mm-hmm. I'll bribe everybody in the country that I need to bribe. And we needed to start buying safe houses, right? If we knew that he was in Lahore, Faisalabad, Karachi, Islamabad, we can't be seen like leaving the embassy, driving to Pakistani intelligence. We need to be discreet. We all grew these long bushy beards. In the embassy, they called me the Archbishop because mine came in all gray, right? It was really long. And we dressed as Pakistanis. Pakistani, the big balloon pants and the flat pancake hats. So just 2 days later, this completely unmarked 737 lands at the airport, and 36 guys get on, half CIA, half FBI, and then pallets and pallets of equipment. It took us hours to unload this plane. And I went to introduce myself to the Pakistani intelligence officer in charge in Faisalabad, and he said, what do you need for me to help you with? And I said, I need a real estate agent. So he got us a real estate agent. We bought 2 houses. We bought a 10-bedroom, 10-bath house in Lahore, figuring we could use the bedrooms to interrogate prisoners. And then we bought a 7-bedroom, 7-bath house in Faisalabad. It was a doctor's house, I remember. And then we started briefing the team, you know, here's what we're going to do, here's what the plan is. We got 14 sites, we're going to have to hit every one of them simultaneously. And I said, it's never been done before, and the risk is high, right? I mean, it's like really high, but not all of us may make it back. So, on the night of the raid, my colleague who I was closest to, he and I'm skipping a lot of this story because it's so long. He and I were walking back to the safe house, and he said, what do you think? You think we're going to get him? And I said, no. I think we're going to get somebody, but I don't think we're going to get him. He's too smart. He's outsmarted us at every step of the way so far. So that day, we decided to drive. It was my colleague and me, the Pakistani colonel, and the targeting analyst. The targeting analyst dropped off and went back to the safe house. But we started going to every one of the 14 sites, just to make sure we weren't being set up, there was ingress and egress, we weren't going to be ambushed. Like, what happens if everything turns to shit? Are they going to be able to shoot at us from the roofs? How high are these buildings? So, the first one we went to, we realized it was a mistake. It was a shish kebab stand with a payphone. And clearly there was Al-Qaeda living in the neighborhood. Whenever they needed to make a call, they'd go to the payphone. But the shish kebab stand closed at midnight, there's nobody there, you can't raid this shish kebab stand, you're not going to get anything. So we cut it off the list. So we have 13 left. And most of these places were just, you know, one-room mud huts, concrete block, little poor people's houses with corrugated tin roofs. And then we came upon this huge house. It was bright yellow. And just as we're coming up to it, the targeting analyst calls me, and he says, I just got a call from a friendly Western intelligence service. And they said that they had a walk-in this morning. A walk-in is somebody who literally walks in off the street and says, I have intelligence information, but I want you to pay me for it. 99% of the time, they're lunatics or potential terrorists or probes, like from the Iranians or the Russians or the North Koreans, just to see where are the cameras, are the windows bulletproof, how thick are the doors, who's armed. We all do this to each other.
Wow.
Yeah, just in case they want to attack our embassy. So, yeah, it happens all the time. It's very dangerous. So he said that this friendly intelligence service said that there is a large congregation of Al-Qaeda fighters, and they're in a big yellow house. And I said, holy shit. I said, I'm right in front of the yellow house. It's site number 12. And he said, well, then that has to be it. I said, I want to talk to the source. I want to talk to the walk-in. And he said, I already asked, and they said no, which made me think that there wasn't a walk-in, that it was an intercept. But they didn't want us to know that they were intercepting Al-Qaeda's communications.
Why would they want you to know?
Because we would try to take it.
Okay.
We'd take over their tap. And, you know, there are a lot of pissing matches in intelligence. Not just between the CIA and the FBI, but then between the CIA and all of its allies and friends.
Like, it's so funny.
It's awful. The politics involved is ridiculous. So then I said to the Pakistani colonel, I said, we're going to have to put a big team on this one. And he said, I can tell you that something bad is going on in that house. I said, how do you figure? He said, it has to be 110 degrees right now. And all of their shutters are closed. He said, it has to be broiling in there. They have something to hide. So I said, okay, we'll put a bigger team on that one. So that night, at 10 o'clock, I stood on the coffee table in the safe house. And it was all 36 of our guys, plus the original 10 that, you know, those of us who were there already, plus all the Pakistanis, right? So we've got, I don't know, 60 guys. And I said, at the risk of sounding melodramatic, we're going to have to synchronize our watches, like in the movies. So we synchronized our watches. 10 o'clock, I still remember. And I said, look, here's what we're going to do. We actually chartered a bus to put everybody on this bus and take them to Faisalabad, because that's where most of the targets were. 3 of the targets were in Lahore, and the other 10 targets were in Faisalabad. And Faisalabad is just one of the most horrible places on earth. And believe me, I've been to 68 countries with the CIA. There aren't many worse places on earth than Pakistan.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bad. And I've been to Yemen and Somalia, and I've been to some of the most horrible places on the planet, and Pakistan's worse. So anyway, I said, here's the plan. 0130, we leave the safe house. 0145, be in the target neighborhood. 0150, be parked in your spot. 0155, make sure that not only do you have line of sight of the target, but make sure that you're not being surveilled. 0158, get out of the car, and exactly at 0200, break down the door, separate all the women and children from the men, and make sure all of the men are cuffed. And I said, because this is an open criminal investigation, our friends from the FBI are going to begin collecting evidence. It was total horseshit, let me tell you. The difference between the CIA and the FBI is the FBI goes in, and they put little sticky notes on the 4 walls. Wall 1, wall 2, wall 3, wall 4. Then they open all the drawers, and they take pictures of what's inside the drawers. Then they look for papers, and they collect all the papers, okay? Because they're going to build a case. CIA, you go in, you bust down the door, you grab all the guys, and you send them to Guantanamo.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious.
So, we were on the roof, my colleague and I, we were on the roof of the safe house at 0200. And I said to him, I looked at my watch and I said, 0200, here we go. And just as I said it, we heard this sound in the distance. Boink, 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 like metal on metal. And I said, that's not good. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Nobody in the country's awake. And then we hear shots fired. And I said, oh man, that's really not good. So I got on the walkie-talkie. We knew that big yellow house was the nearest, physically nearest to us. So I said, Site 12, come in, what's going on over there? And the guy's like, shots fired, shots fired. Well, we knew that. Also, rule number 1 in intelligence operations is the walkie-talkies always die.
Hey,
I
that's it.
actually went to NSA when I got back. They wanted you to do this lessons learned thing, because this was the first successful major capture post 9/11. And I said, please, you guys are all geniuses here, right? You build these computers, these supercomputers, we don't even know what they do. You put satellites. You can't make a battery that doesn't die after an hour? Come on. Like, seriously.
It's funny, the most obvious things, the things that suck the most.
Yeah. So, we run downstairs, we jump in the car, we speed over to the yellow house, and it's chaos. One of the things I told the Pakistanis just before we kicked off, I said, we have to take him alive, right? My orders were very specific. We have to take him alive. So don't shoot unless you're being shot at. It was clear to everybody. So we get there, chaos. One guy is dead, laying dead in the street. I can show you some pictures I have on my phone. Another guy looks like, if he's not dead, he's going to be dead in 5 minutes. And another guy is screaming bloody murder and he's completely soaked in blood.
And these are their guys or your guys?
Their guys.
Okay.
I said, what the fuck happened? And this Pakistani policeman says to me, we got him. We got your man. I said, why'd you shoot them? He said that they were jumping from the roof of the house to the roof of the other house to escape. And so he shot them. So the first one to jump, first of all, the boink, boink, boink we heard was the door was reinforced with steel. And it should have just splintered with the first hit. This, they were working on, the whole time. Abu Zubaydah, a Syrian bomb maker, and Abu Zubaydah's bodyguard were on the 2nd floor. On the 1st floor, there were, still not allowed to say the number, there were several dozen fighters, Al-Qaeda fighters on the 1st floor.
Why wouldn't you be allowed to say the number?
They still will not allow me to say the number of people captured.
Wow.
Yeah, it was many dozens. So, the guys on the 1st floor didn't know who was on the 2nd floor. They knew it was a VIP because there was a kid, they called him a Tiwala. This kid he was working for them, and every day he would go to the market and buy food, and he would cook for them, and he would make tea. And they were cut off from everybody on the 1st floor. So they knew that somebody important was upstairs, and they wondered if it was Bin Laden. Yeah. So when we started breaking down the door, Abu Zubaydah and the other 2 went to the roof, tried to jump to the roof of the next door house, and this idiot Pakistani policeman just starts picking him off with an AK-47. The first guy that jumped was the Syrian bomber. And this was a bad guy. When we got onto the 2nd floor of that house, he had all of his bomb-making stuff on the table, explosives and everything. The soldering iron was still hot because he was making the bomb, and he had the plans to the British school on the table. He was going to blow up the school. This is how bad these people were. So he jumped. The Pakistani guy shot him, killed him instantly. He was dead before he hit the ground. The second one to jump was Abu Zubaydah. And the guy shot him in the thigh, the groin, and the stomach. And he was bleeding out. The third guy, the Pakistani policeman told me, he shot him through the leg, right through the center of his femur. So I said, so which one's my guy? This one, the middle one, who was bleeding out. I said, that doesn't look anything like Abu Zubaydah. We had a 6-year-old passport photo of Abu Zubaydah. He was a young, thin, good-looking, short beard and mustache, closely trimmed.
How old?
He was 24, maybe?
Okay.
In this picture?
Okay.
22?
Okay.
I said, this guy, he doesn't look anything like the picture. This guy was fat, clean-shaven, crazy Albert Einstein hair going all every direction. So I called the targeting analyst, and I said, listen, it's chaos here. The Pakistanis shot a bunch of guys. They say we got him, but this guy doesn't look anything like Abu Zubaydah, and I don't know what to do. And he said, do a retinal scan. right? Take a picture of his eye, email it to me, and I'll run a retinal scan. So I knelt down over him and I shouted, "If hayunik, open your eyes, if hayunik." But his eyes were rolled back in his head. I could just see the whites of his eyes. I couldn't see anything. He was dying. And I said, his eyes are rolled back in his head. I can't see anything. And he said, give me a picture of his ear. I didn't know until that night that no two people on earth have the same ears. They're like fingerprints.
Huh.
Yeah. So I took a picture of his ear. Of course, these are the days when phones didn't have cameras. So I took a picture, I plugged the camera into the phone, I sent the picture to the analyst, he sends it to CIA headquarters, then they respond, it's him. So I said to my colleague, I said, listen, he's gonna die. We gotta get him to a hospital. So we threw him into the back of this filthy Toyota pickup truck. Little tiny pickup truck called a Toyota Cherry. There he is. The picture right there on the right in the center. That one.
Yeah.
That's the passport photo that we had.
Oh, okay. And he was 6 years older than that when you captured him.
Yes, and 50 pounds heavier.
Why does he get the eye patch in that photo?
Yeah, the eye patch.
Is that a result of torture? Advanced interrogation? Enhanced interrogation?
When he was fighting the Soviets, he got a shrapnel wound in his eye. He was blinded in one eye.
Okay.
And then, as part of his torture, we drugged him one day, and we took his eyeball out.
Oh.
Which is a human rights violation. It's a crime against humanity. We didn't even ask him. We didn't even tell him. They just gassed him. And then when he woke up, he had no eyeball. So they gave him a...
Oh, what he was under?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So they gave him a prosthetic eyeball that he has steadfastly refused to wear because he said that we stole his eye. And so he insists on wearing the patch.
Patch looks pretty cool, though.
It does actually look pretty cool.
So you were standing over this guy right here
Yeah.
in the middle of the street at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
while he was dying, bleeding out.
Yeah. We rushed him to Faisalabad Hospital. The worst place I've ever been in my life. This hospital, the windows are open, the doors are open, there are like dogs and cats just walking up and down the halls. There are clouds of mosquitoes feasting on people's open wounds. It was disgusting. And then they had this bar of Irish Spring soap with needles coming out of it. And if you needed a shot, they'd take one of the syringes, they'd give you your shot, and then stick it back in the bar of soap. So here we are. There are like 6 Americans dressed as Pakistanis with an Arab who's bleeding to death. We take him into the emergency room, and I said to the doctor, I said, you've got to patch him up. My orders were to take him alive. And the guy's like, looking at me like, what? What's going on? And we were like, come on, let's go. So they rush him into surgery, and the rest of us just sat down to wait.
How long did the surgery take?
Well, that was kind of a problem. Word got around, the Al-Qaeda community, that we had gotten him. And so they started driving by the hospital and just opening fire on the hospital. And we're diving down on the ground.
While he's in the middle of surgery?
Because they knew we were in there with him.
Holy shit.
I said to the colonel, if they realize how lightly armed we are, we're dead. Can you get a helicopter in here? And he said, I think so. So he makes a couple of calls. 20 minutes later, this helicopter lands in the parking lot. I put my shirt up over my mouth like this. I walked into the operating room, and I said, Doc, wrap it up. We got to go. So they sew and closed. We wheeled him out onto the parking lot and put him on the helicopter, and we flew to a Pakistani military base about 50 miles away. Now, the base was kind of funny. It had a small, not really a hospital so much. It was like a clinic, like a surgical clinic. It had 8 beds. It was in a circle, and the nurse's station was the hub of the wheel, and then 8 beds were the spokes, right? And I noticed there was a chart that had each patient's name and why he was in there, and every one of the patients was in there for an attempted suicide, which was nuts to me. But they had this bed open, 2 beds open, and so we took him in. They took him straight into surgery. So at one point, the doctor came out and he said to me, it was funny because he didn't know who the prisoner was, he didn't know who I was, but this intelligence colonel said, these are VIPs, you got to do what they say. So he comes out and he's like, look, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to tell you, I have never seen wounds so severe where the patient lives. So you may want to tell your people that this is probably not going to be a good outcome. So I called the targeting analyst, and he called headquarters. They were like, do what you can. So while he was in surgery, an ambulance arrived with the bodyguard who had been shot through the leg. And he's screaming, he's crying. And so, I've already been up 24 hours at this point. And my orders, and these were directly from George Tenet, the CIA director, 24/7 CIA eyes on, he said. Those were his exact words. 24/7 CIA eyes on. Don't let the fucking FBI sit there and take over. He's our prisoner, not the FBI's prisoner. While he's in surgery, I'm so sleepy already, I decide to walk around this little clinic. And I hear the guy screaming and crying in the other room. So I went over to him, and I said, Kif Hanak, how are you? And he's crying, he goes, Alhamdulillah, glory to God. And I said, yeah, you don't look so good. And he says, are you American? And I said, yeah, we captured you. And he says, the Pakistanis, the dogs, they captured me, and then they held me down, and then they put an AK-47 on my leg, and they shot me. And I said, that's not what I heard. I heard you were jumping from the roof of the house to the roof of the next door house to escape. And he stops crying, and he says to me, look at me. I am 150 kilos. I cannot jump from the roof. It's like 330 pounds.
Yeah.
And I pull the sheet back. I'm going to find the pictures and show you. I pull the sheet back, and he is not just soaked in blood, but there is a perfect burn mark, like the size of a dinner plate, around his leg. They held that AK right on his skin and pulled the trigger. So the doctor told me we're gonna have to amputate the leg, and I said, well, that's unfortunate. They ended up saving the leg, but the guy's never gonna walk normally again.
Oh my.
Yeah, it was pretty awful.
And it was the Pakistani soldiers that did that?
Yeah, because the guy pissed them off. You know, he wouldn't give up, so they shot him.
God.
It was bad. It was bad.
So they did not amputate his leg.
They did not amputate his leg.
But I'm sure it completely shattered his femur.
Oh my God, the damage, it was disgusting. I'm looking for these pictures while I'm talking to you, and I'm
It's
gonna,
amazing he didn't bleed out.
It was incredible.
Well, I mean, Abu Zubaydah as well,
Well, and
obviously.
speaking of Abu Zubaydah not bleeding out, when he came out of surgery, okay, here, it's not a very good picture, but that's the bomb maker. He's
Okay, he's
clearly dead.
Yeah.
He's dead in that picture. He's on a morgue table in
Right.
that picture. And that's the bodyguard.
Oh my
As you can
God.
tell, there was some significant bleeding. Yeah. And then
That is brutal.
it was bad, really bad. I'm gonna find Abu Zubaydah for you. And here's Abu Zubaydah after we threw him in the back of the pickup truck. As you can see, he looks nothing like that picture.
No. Wow. He looks totally different.
Totally, completely different. And I'll tell you what, I
And
saw.
was that by design? Was he doing?
Yeah,
did he do that on
it was a
purpose?
disguise.
Right.
I saw my whole career just like go up and smoke it. I was like, who the heck is that?
Right.
So anyway, they finally bring him out of surgery, and I was really, really tired. And so I was afraid I was going to fall asleep. And I'm thinking, is the doctor secretly Al-Qaeda? Maybe the doctor's going to break him out, or maybe he's not as badly wounded as I think he is, and I'm going to fall asleep, and then he's going to get up and run away. So I tore a sheet into strips, and I tied him to the bed by the wrists and the ankles. He was bleeding so profusely.
This was after surgery?
After surgery.
Okay.
He was bleeding so profusely that it was actually pooling under the bed.
Oh.
I've said before, it was like a scene from a horror movie. I've never seen anything like it in my life. He was soaked in blood. We had blood all over us. It's in this giant puddle underneath the bed. So they had this pump. I'd never seen anything like this before. You know how they have like blood just dripping into your arm? Well, they attached a pump to it, so it's forcing the blood into your arm, like at this greatly accelerated rate, because he was bleeding so badly that they had to replace the blood as quickly as possible.
To keep him alive.
Yeah, just to keep him alive. And he was in a coma, and the doctor's like, I don't think he's going to make it. So I sat there with my arms crossed at the foot of his bed, and I just stared at him. I just stared at him. And I put the ceiling fans on full blast to make it like slightly uncomfortable so that I wouldn't fall asleep. And then during the night, I called a buddy of mine at the safe house, and I said, man, would you do me a favor? I said, I'm friggin' starving, first of all.
You're supposed to eat Abu Zubaydah.
I know, right? I'm starving. And I said, I'm really dirty. I smell really bad. I've got a clean shirt and a pair of underwear. Can you bring them to the hospital from the safe house? So a couple hours later, he comes. He's got like these, you know, those little cheese crackers and peanut butter crackers. And I passed a couple of those. He had a thing of orange juice. And there was a red T-shirt that my kids had bought me for Christmas with SpongeBob SquarePants on it, like the decal, you know. And he gave me my clean underwear. So I got changed. And then the next day, just a little bit. And so I stood up at the foot of his bed and I was looking down on him. And I say in my, did I get it? Sorry, I think you're good. I say in my first book, you could tell the exact instant that he realized, oh my God, the Americans have me. Because he was hooked up to all these machines and his heart rate is 110, right? And when he opens his eyes, he doesn't look at my face, he looks at SpongeBob. And his heart rate went to 220. And the machine starts going beep, 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 and then you hear code blue, Bay 1, code blue, and then they rush in, and they shock him, you know, clear. I've never seen this before, except on TV, right? Clear, they shock him, and then they give him this shot of Demerol that they put right into the drip, and then he was out again.
That poor bastard woke up and saw SpongeBob for the first time after being blown away by an AK-47.
Yeah. It was too much for him. So he was out for another 6 or 8 hours.
He saw SpongeBob and he knew he was fucked.
He knew he was fucked. It was over. Finally, he...
What? Huh?
He said that he's at an age where his family members are dying, like dying a lot, and he said that his uncle is dying, so he thinks he should probably go and hang out with him. He's like, but I have
I'm gonna make it two sheets on one side. Oh fuck.
opens his eyes, and again, I've got him tied to the bed by the wrists and ankles, so he's laying there like this, and he opens his eyes, and he goes like this, like motioning for me to come near him. So I go right next to him, like I put my ear right next to his mouth, and I moved his oxygen mask off to the side, and I said, Shuismak, what is your name? And he shook his head. So I said again, Shuismak. And he said to me in English, I will not speak to you in God's language.
Huh.
And I said, that's okay, Apple Beta, we know who you are. And he starts crying, and he says, please, brother, kill me. Take the pillow and kill me. And I said, nobody's going to kill you.
Not the classic. The current version has cosmetics, but the original classic doesn't.
Been looking for you for a long time. He said, what's going to happen to me? And I said, honestly, I don't know. But I'm going to give you some advice. I'm the nicest guy that you're going to meet in this experience. My colleagues, they're not nice like I am. So if there's one thing that you do, it's that you have to cooperate. And he said, you seem like a nice man, but you're the enemy, and I'll never cooperate. I said, suit yourself. So I sit back down. He wants to talk. What happened? I said, well, you're jumping on the roof. He remembered going to the roof. I said, you tried to jump, and Pakistani guy shot you. And I said, you're severely wounded. It's going to take a long time for you to recover. But listen, you should take this time to do the right thing. A lot of people are going to ask you a lot of questions, and you have to be honest. And he said, no, that he didn't know anything about 9/11, that all he ever wanted to do was kill Jews, he said. That he didn't want to attack the United States. He wanted to attack Israel, and they outvoted him. We talked, one of the things that we captured that night was his diary. And books have been written. 2 books have been written about his diary. One of the FBI psychologists said it was the rantings of a madman. It's like, well, clearly you and I didn't read the same diary, right? Because really what it was more of a doodle book than anything else. He would doodle, draw pictures, and he would write poems. He recited a lot of his poetry to me.
You read it?
Oh, yeah.
All of it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then I consulted on one of the books. So, one of the things that he did, and this is weird, he's a strange guy. He's not a guy that you're going to want to go out and have a beer with.
Sorry to interrupt. How old was he this time? when you captured him?
30, 29 or 30.
29 or 30.
He had this weird thing that he would do where he would write letters to himself as a young man or as a teenager. So it's the 30-year-old Abu Zubaydah writing to the 14-year-old Abu Zubaydah and giving himself advice.
His past self.
To his past self. Listen, you should have done it this way. Oh, you shouldn't have gone out with those guys. They were bad guys. You should have been kinder to your mother on this day. Stuff like that. It was weird, but it was expressive. He's a very artistic kind of person. So he'd draw these pictures, and he would write poems, and he would write a scene from a play, and then he would write a letter to himself. And the FBI's like, clearly he's insane. It's like, no, he's not freaking insane. It's a doodle book. So anyway, oh my God, how we fought about that for years.
Really?
Yeah. Because they said he was insane. Anyway,
Well, he was just a kid.
yeah, he was a kid. Right? I don't know how old you are, but now, in my mind, I'm still 20, but I'm actually 57, and I have to remind myself, you're not 20 anymore, right? I wish I was, and I think back on things that I would have done differently. I've never actually written it down anywhere, but
Right.
Sometimes people do. So,
So what happened to him after that visit with him in the hospital when you were talking to him?
well, I never left, and then finally one of my colleagues came and said, listen, we got to get him ready to go. They're sending a plane in, and I said, where's he gonna go? And my friend's like, I don't have any idea. So. I told him, I said, listen, we're going to take you out of this place, and you're going somewhere else. And he said, are they going to kill me? And I said, no. I said, I don't know what's going to happen to you, but I can guarantee that you are going to get the best medical care that the American government can provide. And I'm going to tell you again, you have to cooperate. And I said, I don't need to sound...
They really wanted to keep him alive.
Oh, yeah, they did. They had big plans for him. I said, I don't need to sound cruel, but your life is over. It's over. You'll never be free again. And so the rest of it can be easy, or it can be terrible. And it's up to you. So I told him a plane is coming and it's going to take you to someplace else. I don't know where that is. So he asked me if I would hold his hand. So 3 FBI agents and I picked him up in his gurney. I'm holding his hand with one hand and holding onto the gurney with the other. We take him out to the plane. And we had to lift him up like to a standing position to maneuver him onto the plane. And then we laid him across the luggage rack at the back. And we tied the gurney down to the luggage rack. And I said, I leaned over and I said, remember, you have to cooperate. And he squeezed my hand. And I said, good luck. And then, as I'm getting off the plane, one of these CIA dudes, who was wearing completely black with a black hood, he says to me, John? And I go, yeah, who are you? And he lifts up his hood.
Why was he wearing a hood?
Everybody was wearing hoods. Yeah, it's weird. They didn't want to be recognized. This was the rendition team. So this is like the most secret of all the secret things that the CIA does, right? These international kidnappings. So they didn't want him to see their faces. And I said, "How are you?" And he lifts up his mask just a little bit, and he was my last boss at the CIA. He goes, "What are you doing here?"
No shit.
Yeah, and I said, "Man, we've been doing raids. We got this as our first HVT, high value target." And he said, "Who is he?" And I said, "Dude, I'm sorry, you don't have a need to know. I'm not allowed to say who he is." And he said, "No, that's cool." I said, "Where are you taking him?" And he goes, "Oh, dude, you don't have a need to know. I'm so sorry." I said, "No. I said, Godspeed, wherever you're going, I hope you have safe travel." And then he took off, and I never saw him again.
But he was going to Guantanamo.
No.
No.
It was years before he got to Guantanamo.
Really? So he went to one of those black sites.
He went to 6 of those blasts.
6 of the black sites. Now, what's the deal with the black sites, the CIA black sites?
Well-
What? For people who don't know what they are, they sound so fucking mysterious.
Yeah, they are. This is bad. This is how secret this is. A black site is a secret facility, usually housed on a foreign military base, right? I'm not allowed to say any of the countries, even though they've all been reported on in the media. The CIA has never admitted to the existence of black sites, and so I can't confirm their locations, but I can say Google it and the locations.
Yeah.
So many of these black sites, the presidents and prime ministers of the countries that they were in had no idea that they were there.
Really?
These were secret, unwritten handshake agreements between the director of the CIA, and the director of that country's intelligence service. So, in many cases, even the ministers of defense didn't know that these secret CIA torture facilities were on their military bases in their countries. That's how secret they were. And then if somebody would say, "Oh, well, what's that building over there? We haven't used that building in years, and I've been seeing people coming in and out of it lately." 2 days later, building's abandoned. Everybody's in a different country. That's what they would do. So you go from country A to country B to C, D, E, F, all over
The
the world.
CIA's been doing this stuff for decades,
back to
right?
the
I mean, all the way back to like those LSD experiments. They were doing tests on people in different countries just
That's
because
right.
they didn't want to violate the laws.
That's right. Yeah. I went back to the safe house. I slept for a while after Abu Zubaydah took off. I went back to the safe house, and there was one incident that happened that I was 1,000% right about that dogged me later when I got back to headquarters. We had done, that night, one of the raids that we did was a mistake. It was a girls' school in a private house. And what happened was, this house was an old man in his 70s and his 2 sons and their wives. They had the only phone in the neighborhood. And so people would come over and say, "Hey, can I use the phone?" And the old man would say, "Sure, give me 5 rupees. They'd give him 5 rupees, they make a call. Well, they're calling, Osama bin Laden. So we were like, "Oh my God, that phone, that house, it's like a headquarters of Al-Qaeda." We bust down the door, we grabbed this old man and his sons, and they were scared shitless, right? So there was this idiot working for me, and he brings them to the safe house. He's got his 3 prisoners cuffed behind their backs, and they have these black hoods on. And I said, "Why are they hooded?" He goes, "Why are they hooded? We don't want them to see our faces." And I said, "Are you seriously fucking telling me that you have never read the Geneva Convention? It is a war crime to hood your prisoners. Take the hoods off." And he goes, "Dude, if you take those hoods off, I'm reporting you to headquarters." I said, "I'm reporting you to headquarters for committing a war crime. Now take the hoods off." So I pulled the hoods off. Turns out these 3 guys were completely innocent of anything. They just happened to have the only phone in the neighborhood. So I said to the Pakistanis, "What can I do to make it right for these people? Because this is going to be a PR disaster. This is like the most secret thing we've done in 20 years. And these guys are, they're going to tell everybody. The Americans broke down the door of my house. They took me. They put hoods on me and my kids. And, it was awful." And he said, "Give them $100 each." So I said to the old man, I said, "Sir, we've made a terrible mistake. And on behalf of the President of the United States, I apologize to you and to your family. And I hope that you will take this money to repair the damage that we've done to your home." And he said that he accepted my apology. The very next day, there he is on the news, the Pakistani news, standing in front of the destroyed door. And he said, "It was the Americans. They broke down the door of my house. They took my sons and me. We don't know where we were, but they were very polite, and they bought us new shoes. So it kind of went away. It was a one-day story.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, so I get back to headquarters, and they ream me out because I took the hoods off. And I said, it's a war crime. Why does nobody understand this? You know, there are rules for these kinds of things that we're doing. If we're really the good guys, then let's be the good guys.
And these are all Pakistani guys you're talking to?
No, they're Americans. They're all our people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you didn't think it was weird that you were the only guy that was like really worried about?
I just figured they were all retards.
Oh, okay. But you were the only one that was worried about the hood. Like no
Yeah.
one else had even batted an eye at it.
Yeah, no. They're like, hey, who cares?
Huh.
They're our prisoners. They're terrorists. We're the good guys.
Don't you think it's weird? I always thought it was super strange how, like, just after you telling that story about Abu, what's his name?
Zubaydah.
Abu Zubaydah. That Bin Laden, when they captured Bin Laden, they killed him instantly, right?
Yeah. They never had any intention of taking him alive.
Is it weird to you that they never like brought his body back to the U.S.?
No, I would have expected that they would destroy the body.
Really?
I was hoping, a lot of my colleagues and I hoped that they would bring him back alive. Because, I mean, talk about the triumph of law and order, right? Talk about the triumph of a constitutional
Right.
democracy. We would just blew him away. Which is fine, too. I mean, the guy committed horrible crimes and killed thousands of Americans. But I was hoping that we could set an example for the rest of the world by putting him on trial, finding him guilty, and executing him.
I just thought, I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought it was like standard practice to even if we do get and kill those high value targets that we bring their bodies back to give them autopsy and do like DNA.
Normally, yes. Well, the DNA, we took DNA. See, his family, the Bin Laden family is one of the most important merchant families in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
They're worth many billions of dollars, and they have the biggest construction company in the kingdom. They do the big stuff, like airports and ports and
Is
highways.
it currently like that too?
Yeah.
Still big?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I know what was his sister, his daughter or something lives in Israel or something.
Well, there's one that lives here in Orlando.
Really?
Yeah. There's one that lives in Beverly Hills. There's one that lives in...
Are these children of his?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Not of Osama.
Oh, okay.
Of the old man, Abdurrahman.
Oh, his dad. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he had like 65 sons and 40-something daughters.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
a whole bunch of wives. And, you know, this Osama's the one that went bad. So, you know, as soon as it was clear that it was Al-Qaeda that did 9/11, his family just volunteered. Like, we want to give you DNA, so when you kill him, you can be sure that it's him. We said, great. Because, you know, when you get hit with one of these drone rockets, there's going to be a shoulder over there and a foot over there and some scalp over there. It's not like you can look at the body and say, oh, that's Osama bin Laden. He's in pieces, normally.
Right.
So we had the DNA, but the reason why they threw the body overboard...
Oh, they did it. Threw it off a ship?
Yeah, they flew it out to a ship.
Why the fuck would they do that?
Because they didn't want it to become a source of reverence. They didn't want it to be, you know, a mecca for terrorists or inspirational for terrorists. So they figured if they destroyed it, there'd be no place for anybody to go to revere it. So-
How would it inspire terrorists if we did an autopsy on him?
Well, it's the same reason that you know, Hitler was the Soviets cremated Hitler and threw his ashes in a river. You just don't want people. You don't want a rallying point for people.
Mm.
And we didn't really need the autopsy because we
Okay.
had the DNA.
Okay.
You could just sort of do a pseudo autopsy later.
Right.
Yeah, they
Okay.
had a Muslim cleric on board, a naval chaplain who's a Muslim, and he did all the funeral prayers. They wrapped him up in a shroud and they threw him over the side.
Wow.
Mm.
No pictures or video of it or anything?
No, in fact, the president was very, very specific about that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But even though we showed video of Hussein being hung.
Yeah. Well, that slipped out. One of the executioners did it on his phone.
Okay.
That wasn't official. That was also pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
To his right? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird stuff. It's crazy. What were we just talking about?
The body going overboard.
Oh, yeah, the body. So, okay, so where is Abu Zubaydah? Well, I keep
Abu
forgetting.
Zubaydah.
Where's he at right now?
So in 2006, after 4 years going from secret site to secret site, we
Right.
sent him to
Okay,
Guantanamo.
6 years he was on the black side to black side.
Yeah, so we sent him to Guantanamo in 2006, and he's been there ever since. There was a very interesting article in the New York Times 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. Carol Rosenblum is the only reporter anywhere that covers these issues. Nobody cares anymore about Abu Zubaydah. I mean, this is ancient history. It happened 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago. He doesn't have any actionable intelligence anymore. The information's a generation old, so nobody cares, except for her. And broke this story 2 weeks ago that there are negotiations underway by Abu Zubaydah's attorneys, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's attorneys.
Pull it under you.
This one?
Yeah, just pull it right under you just a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
You scooted in that thing, didn't
Oh,
you?
right. Abu Zubaydah's attorneys, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's attorneys, Ramzi bin Ashib, Amar al-Baluch, and maybe one other, to negotiate a guilty plea. Only Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's ever been charged with a crime. Abu Zubaydah's never been charged with a crime, any crime.
There's a ton of guys there that haven't been charged with crimes, right?
Almost none of them have. Yeah, only Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. So the deal is they will agree to plead guilty to terrorism and conspiracy to commit terrorism, and in exchange we'll give them life without parole, but we'll allow them to remain at Guantanamo for the rest of their lives. What they're worried about, they now realize after 20 plus years, they're not getting out. So what they want is they don't want to go to the Supermax in Florence, Colorado. The weather's terrible, it's cold, they don't like the cold, they want to stay in Cuba. So that's what the deal is going to end up being.
Wow. Wow. Have you ever heard the story? Have you ever been to Guantanamo?
Once.
When was that?
Summer of 2002. After we had caught Abu Zubaydah, before we had caught Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, but before Abu Zubaydah arrived there. Yeah.
Wow.
It's packed.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's so.
And you know what's funny? I have some like regular contacts now who were prisoners there. Like I'm friendly with Mohammed Ould-Slahi from Mauritania. That poor guy. I mean, there were so many innocent people.
I heard a story about a guy named Latif Nasir. There was like another guy in Canada with the same exact name. He did this like long podcast story about the guy and had contact with him or through his attorney.
Yes. There are several stories like that. Have you ever heard of Maher Arar?
No.
Also Canadian? So Maher Arar is a political science professor at the University of Toronto. And he's ethnically Tunisian. He's a naturalized Canadian citizen, and he's been a political science professor for a long time. So he went, in 2001, he went to Tunisia to visit some cousins of his. And a woman that I was working for at the time said, this guy is a bad guy, Maher Arar. We even had staff meetings about him. And there were several of us, there were three of us. I was one of the three who said, you guys don't speak Arabic. That's what the problem is. There's a bad guy who has a name that sounds like Maher Arar, but it's not Maher Arar. This guy is a friggin' political science professor. She says, grab him. So we asked the FBI to grab him at Kennedy Airport when he flew back from Tunisia. The FBI grabs him, they turn him over to the CIA. The CIA turns him over to Syrian intelligence, right? Syrian intelligence. They tortured this guy mercilessly for 10 months. They gave him electroshock to his balls, they pulled his fingernails out, they raped him, they did, sleep deprivation. They made him a whimpering mush of a man. And then the Syrians came back to us and they said, listen, we think this is the wrong guy. This guy doesn't know anything. We broke him. And so we said, let him go. In the meantime, his wife is waiting for him at the airport in Toronto. He was supposed to get off the plane at Kennedy and get a connection to Toronto. He never gets on the plane, or gets off the plane. So his wife asks, what's up? And the FAA said, oh no, he never got on the plane in Tunisia. But then a month later, she gets a credit card bill, and here, he had bought her a pair of sunglasses on the duty-free on the plane. And she said, look, I have proof he was on the plane. He bought a pair of sunglasses from the duty-free. And they were like, we don't know what's going on, sorry. So finally he was released, and he's like, they snatched me off the plane with these FBI badges, then the CIA took me, then the Syrians tortured me for the last 10 months. He filed a $20 million lawsuit against the U.S. government. Filed it in the Eastern District of Virginia, in Alexandria. And the CIA goes to the Eastern District Court, and they said, national security, Your Honor, we can't talk about any of this. Sources and methods. And the judge is like, case dismissed. So,
wow.
So
nothing happened?
He sued the Canadian government because we informed the Canadians, you have an Al-Qaeda guy working at the University of Toronto. And he wasn't. So the Canadians gave him $6 million. But the last time I spoke to him, he told me that he has not left his house in 14 years. He has such terrible anxiety disorder now and agoraphobia that he has not left the four walls of his house in 14 years.
Good fucking Lord, that's crazy.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll tell you about another one. There's a guy named Khalid Al-Masri. The name Al-Masri means the Egyptian. It's not even really a name. It's just this guy goes by Khalid. His name's Khalid Al-Masri. He owned a little grocery store in Berlin. And he got in a fight with his wife one night. And their marriage was lousy, and he just decided, I'm out of here. And so he gets on a bus to go to Macedonia to visit his brother. He just needs to get away from his wife. In the meantime, there's this guy named Khalid who's Egyptian. So he would be Khalid al-Masri, right? And he's on the phone saying, hey, I want to blow up the American embassy in Albania. So we get a tip that there's this guy, Khalid al-Masri, who wants to blow up the American embassy, and there's this guy, Khalid al-Masri, who's on a bus on the way to Macedonia. We send in this team with a helicopter coming down, and they stop the bus and they snatch him off the bus. And they send him to Egypt. And we tell the Egyptians, soften him up a little bit. Tell us what the plans are to blow up our embassy in Albania. He didn't know what the fuck we were talking about. So he's there for a year. Same thing with him. They electrocute him, they beat him, they rape him, they pull his fingernails out. And then they come back to us and they're like, you know there are like 50 million people named Khalid al-Masri. This is not the guy you're looking for. And then they come back to us and they're like, you know there are like 50 million people named Khalid al-Masri. This is not the guy you're looking for. And they release him. But when he comes out of Egypt, he's got a beard down to his waist, he's holding a copy of the Quran, and he told a reporter all he wants to do now is kill Americans. Because that's what we did to him.
Right.
We do this kind of thing all the time.
Well, didn't we sort of create Bin Laden's ideology against America?
I'm glad that you put it that way. The answer to that question is yes, we did. We didn't create Bin Laden. There's this misconception that Bin Laden was one of the Afghan Mujahideen that we had funded during the war against the Soviets.
Right.
He wasn't. He didn't arrive in Afghanistan until after the Soviets had departed. But in terms of that ideology, absolutely, yes, we created that group. What we did is we had such an obsession with communism well into the late 80s that it was, the policy was to defeat the Russians at all costs.
Right.
And one of the things that we did to defeat the Russians was to provide Stinger missiles to the Afghan Mujahideen. And it was the missile that turned the war around. Because all of a sudden, from a shoulder launcher, you can take down a Russian plane, a Russian helicopter. We just decimated the Russian military that way. And what we did is we radicalized these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Russians are gone. And they're still radical. And then what do we do? Then we have to cover it up.
Jesus. Do you think that, obviously, I know your stance on, all of these fucking torture techniques that we used to use, like waterboarding and all of these things, but do you think that waterboarding has ever been an effective technique?
No.
Never.
Never. No. It's meant to punish, not to collect information. I'll tell you, you know how I feel about the FBI. It's hard for me to compliment the FBI. But if there's one thing that the FBI is good at, it's interrogation. They've been doing it since the Nuremberg trials in 45 and 46. And what they do, it's not sexy, and it's not something you see in the movies, but they establish a rapport with a subject. They're kind to the subject. Instead of beating him and electrocuting him and, throwing ice water on him, they offer him a cigarette or an orange or a date or, paper to write to his parents or whatever. And over the course of time, and usually it's only a few weeks, the subject will open up and provide information. See, this is the postscript to the Abu Zubaydah capture story. Abu Zubaydah was sent to the secret site. And because, I'm going to say it for the third time, because 9/11 was an open criminal investigation, primacy was given to the FBI. That drove the CIA crazy. We wanted primacy. This was our operation. But the FBI, specifically an FBI agent by the name of Ali Soufan, began to interrogate Abu Zubaydah. And what he did is we waited until he was recovered from the gunshots. And Ali sat across the table from him and talked. And like I say, offer him a cigarette. Offer him. An apple or a cup of tea or something. And over the course of weeks, Abu Zubaydah began to speak. Now, Abu Zubaydah told us two things that were absolutely critically important. Number one, we didn't have any idea what the Al-Qaeda wiring diagram looked like. No idea. We knew Bin Laden was the boss, and Zawahiri was the underboss, for lack of a better term. And that was it. We didn't know anything else. We knew that there's Al-Qaeda, in Rome, there's Al-Qaeda in Jakarta, Al-Qaeda in Mexico City, but we didn't know who or how they reported back to Bin Laden. We didn't know anything. So Ali said, and I'm just going to use this as an example, if you're going to do an attack in Dusseldorf, how would you do that? And Abu Zubaydah said, well, I know this guy, Mohammed, and here's his phone number. He's in Dusseldorf, and Mohammed's got a friend, Abdullah, and here's Abdullah's phone number. Abdullah has access to weapons. And I was talking to Abdullah one time, and he told me about this guy, Rashid, and here's Rashid's number. And Rashid knows explosives. He can build bombs. So we can call the Germans and say, hey, you have a problem in Dusseldorf, and here are the guys you need to raid. And then they raid the apartments, and they grab these guys. So we didn't know any of that stuff until Abu Zubaydah started telling us about it. The other thing that Abu Zubaydah told us about, and this was one of the most important things that we learned through the course of the so-called War on Terror. We knew that there was a very bad guy out there who went by the nom de guerre Mukhtar, right? We knew this was a bad, bad guy who in 1996 had conceptualized this operation called the Bojinka Plan. Have you ever heard of Bojinka? So this was a plan to hijack 14 747s leaving from Manila Airport and fly all 14 of them into buildings up and down the west coast of the United States. It was accidentally broken up by the Philippine police, and all we knew was that the mastermind was this guy Mukhtar, and he had escaped. So we knew, I mean, this was a teaching point at the CIA. Like, we really lucked out with this one, because we didn't know anything about it, but the Filipino police stumbled on it, the guy got away, but here's the plan. We know that Al-Qaeda is going to use airliners as weapons, right? So we knew that in 1996. They wanted to use planes as weapons. But we didn't know who Mukhtar was. So Ali's like, you keep talking about this Mukhtar. Who is he? And Abu Zubaydah smiles and he said, you don't know Mukhtar? And he said, well, we know that there is a guy, Mukhtar, and that he's a bad guy. He's the operational leader of Al-Qaeda. And he said, sure, who is he? He goes, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. We never heard that name before. We didn't have any idea who Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was. But you know what? 2 months later, he's in custody. And what we did when we captured him, we captured him in an Al-Qaeda safe house in Rawalpindi. We walked him past Abu Zubaydah's cell so that they could see each other. And Abu Zubaydah immediately burst into tears. Why did he burst into tears? Because he was a true believer, and it was his information that allowed us to capture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Wow. Wow. That's so fucking wild. So fucking wild. Let's go back, or let's jump forward in time. When you originally went on, what was it, ABC?
Yeah.
And you spoke out against the torture program. What was like the sequence of events to you going from there to being actually prosecuted and being sent to prison?
Right. So, I wish I could say that my intention that day was purely patriotic. It actually wasn't. I got a call from Brian Ross at ABC News, and he said that he had a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah. I said that was absolutely untrue. I said I was the only person who was kind to Abu Zubaydah. I've never laid a hand on Abu Zubaydah or on any other prisoner. I said, your source is either mistaken or he's a liar. Well, he says, you're welcome to come on the show and defend yourself. Which I had never spoken to a journalist before. I didn't know that was an old reporter's trick.
Well, he was just lying.
He said that that's what he had heard.
So he did have a real source?
Yeah. So I said, I'll think about it. Well, a couple of days later, the president's giving a press conference. And one of the reporters asked him about torture. What about these reports that the CIA is torturing people? And he looks in the camera and he says, we do not torture. Like that. And
Is this Bush?
Bush. I was sitting on the couch watching this with my wife, and I looked at her and I said, he is a bald-faced liar. He's looking the American people in the eye and he's lying to us. A couple of days after that, it's a Friday, and he's walking from the south portico of the White House to the helicopter to go to Camp David, and a reporter shouts a question about torture again. And he stops and he turns and he says, well, if there is torture, it's a rogue CIA officer. And I looked at my wife and I said, they're going to try to pin this on me. Because they were mad that I was the only one who spoke out. They're going to pin this on me.
Oh, this is after you went on ABC, he said this?
No, this is before. 2 days before.
Oh, okay, so the guy from ABC called you, the journalist called you, said this, and then you saw the president say this on TV.
So I realized Brian Ross was telling me the truth, that he did have a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah, because that was the plan. They were going to say, look, everybody knows that we're torturing prisoners. Let's pin it on this asshole. He's the one who would never shut up about it. So I said to my wife,
You were the humanitarian.
I was the
guy.
human rights guy.
Oh my God.
So I called Brian Ross. I said, I'll give you your interview. And I decided in the days leading up to that interview that whatever he asked me, I was going to tell the truth. And so I said 3 things in that interview that just completely changed the course of the rest of my life. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official U.S. government policy. It was not the result of a rogue. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president himself. The president's a liar. And so, as you can imagine, within 24 hours, the CIA filed what's called a crimes report against me with the Justice Department, saying that I had revealed classified information. my attorney, I hired an attorney, of course, and my attorney said,
You had him on speed dial. It's like you walked out of that studio.
you can't classify a crime. So,
You can't classify a crime.
yeah, they said he released classified information. Torture is illegal, and so by virtue of its illegality, it's unclassified.
Yeah, but is it illegal if it's not in our country?
It's
How do you
illegal.
define if it's illegal
Oh,
if
the
it's in a
law,
black site?
no, the law is crystal clear. It can't be done by an American or any person acting on behalf of an American.
That's what the law says. Okay.
Yeah. So the FBI investigated me for a year, from December of 2007 until December of 2008. And in December of 2008, they sent my lawyer a letter called a declination letter, saying that they were declining to prosecute me. And then one of the FBI agents said, this was the worst kept secret in Washington. Everybody knew the CIA was torturing its prisoners. Like, everybody at the FBI talked about it. And when they started torturing Abu Zubaydah, every FBI officer at the secret site left the country. They didn't even want to be in the same country while it was happening. That's how wrong they knew it was. So they dropped the charges. My wife and I went out to dinner that night to celebrate. 3 weeks later, Barack Obama becomes president, and John Brennan becomes, well, first he was named CIA director, but then they withdrew the nomination. He became the deputy national security advisor for counterterrorism. Well, John and I have always hated each other, and he was one of the founders of the torture program. So Barack Obama becomes president January the 20th, 2009. John Brennan asks the Justice Department to secretly reopen the case against me. And they investigated me for 3 more years until January of 2012. I had no idea that my phones were tapped. I had no idea that my emails were being intercepted. I had no idea that it was being followed by teams of FBI agents. And then on January 12th, 2012, I was arrested, charged with 3 counts of espionage, 1 count of violating the what was it called? The Intelligence Identities Protection Act of 1982, and 1 count of making a false statement. We were never clear on what the false statement was supposed to have been. In the end, yeah, I hadn't committed espionage, just like Tom Drake hadn't committed espionage, and Ed Snowden hasn't committed espionage, and Julian Assange hasn't committed espionage. So in my case, they dropped all 3 of those charges. I took a plea to violating the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, and they dropped the false statements charge. So I had been facing 45 years in prison, and I ended up getting 23 months.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, I turned down the 23 months. They made their best and final offer, right? 30 months, you do 23. My wife and I stayed up literally all night talking about what we should do. And I'm like, I'm innocent. I can't take a plea to something that I didn't do. And I had this idea that, once I get in front of a jury, they're going to realize how ridiculous this is. They're going to realize that I was targeted because of my position on human rights. And so I emailed my lawyers. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I said, we've been up all night. We decided I'm going to turn down the best and final. One of the attorneys calls me back immediately. He says, put on a pot of coffee. We're on our way over. So I had 11 lawyers. So 3 of them come. And I mean, these are like A-list, nationally known, the greatest criminal defense attorneys in Washington, $1,000 an hour 10 years ago. So they get to the house, and they each had sort of different roles. One was sort of the day-to-day guy. One was this southern gentleman in the $2,000 suit who was nice to everybody. And then one was just an ass kicker, right? And I liked and trusted him the most. So they're saying, look, John, you're making a big mistake here. And I said, I'm innocent. Well, be that as it may, you really should think about this deal. And then the ass kicker pulls me aside, gets right in my face, and he says, you know what your problem is? Your problem is you think this is about justice, and it's not about justice. It's about mitigating damage. Take the fucking deal. And I thought, see, he knows better than I do. I can't win. My best friend's wife, it's linear. My best friend's wife has an uncle who was O.J. Simpson's jury consultant. And it wasn't just O.J. He did Patrick Michael Smith, whatever his name was, the Kennedy kid that got charged with rape. He did George Zimmerman. Does all these big cases. So because he's the uncle of my best friend's wife, he agreed to help me for free. So we get him top secret security clearance from Justice. He comes up, he reads all 15,000 pages of classified documents in my case. We had this big meeting. I couldn't even meet with my attorneys at their office. We had to meet at the Justice Department's conference room because it was classified. Wow. Yeah, awful. So he said to me, look, if we were in any other district in America, I'd say, let's go for it. We're going to win. But the Eastern District of Virginia, the espionage court, your jury is going to be made up of people from the CIA, the Pentagon, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and a dozen different intelligence contractors. You don't have a prayer. Take the deal. So I took the deal. I said to the lead attorney afterwards, if I hadn't taken the deal, realistically, what was I looking at? And he said 12 to 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
It's a joke that everybody in prison is innocent. One of the things that I learned is there are a lot of innocent people in prison.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the big things about, I've had a couple lawyers on here, or one, in fact, a friend of mine who's a lawyer who represents a lot of people that go on death row. And he said one of the biggest issues, the biggest problems with death row, regardless of what your moral stance is on it, is that they get it wrong a lot.
A lot. Yes. It's been proven.
Yeah.
Like how many hundreds of people have been exonerated thanks to DNA evidence.
Right. It's fucking unbelievable how often it happens.
This lead attorney that I told you about, the mean one, he's so rich and has been an attorney for so long that he doesn't anymore take like new cases. He has people working for him to do that. What he does is he only does death penalty appeals. That's it.
Really?
Because he said he wants to, public service and give back and all this stuff. He's done 13 death penalty appeals and he's won all 13 of them. You should see his office. It's
What's his name?
Mark McDougal.
Mark McDougal.
Guy's a giant. You go into his
Sounds
office.
like a really good attorney.
A really, really great attorney. At Aiken Gump and Strauss, one of the most important law firms in the world.
Wow.
You go into his office, and it's like a museum of awards from every civil liberties organization in America. From the NAACP to the Brennan Center for Justice, and
That's incredible.
for all these appeals that he's won. The guy's a genius.
What was it like being a guy like yourself who's been overseas, seeing all this stuff, been in these gunfights, captured terrorists, and then going into prison? Like, what was that like for you in the beginning, and then how did you adapt?
It was so shocking. I actually wrote a book about it that won 2 literary awards. I wrote Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. At sentencing, my attorneys asked the judge to send me to a minimum security work camp. Minimum security, there are no bars on the windows. They don't lock the door. You're free to come and go as you please. You're on your honor not to abscond. Most everybody works in town. There's a little college in town. And so the prosecution had no objection. So she, orders that I go to minimum security work camp. And the funny thing is, too, you see on Law and Order, for example, when somebody's guilty, right there in the courtroom, they take them away in cuffs. And that's not how they do. I mean, if you're a really bad guy, they do. But what they do is they say, okay, you're going to get a letter from the Bureau of Prisons, and the letter's going to tell you the day and the time that you have to turn yourself in. So they sent me a letter, and they said, come to the prison on February 28th, no later than 11 a.m., and turn yourself in. So I get in the car with 2 of my attorneys, my cousin, his son, and a documentary film crew, and we drive up to the prison. And it's weird, you just knock on the door, and you're like, hi, I'm John Kiriakou, I'm here to turn myself in. And the guy's like, I went to the camp, and the guy's like, you got to go across the street to the prison. They process you there, and then they walk you back over here. I said, okay. So I go across the street to the actual prison.
It's got to be so hard.
You're in shock. So it's like your brain won't even really process it. You're doing it, but you're not processing it. You're not thinking about it.
Like,
really.
maybe we should go get some McDonald's first.
We did that.
Did you?
Yeah. So let's go to McDonald's.
That's so funny. That's what I just randomly thought of.
Yeah. We all went to McDonald's. And so I go to the prison across the street. Camps are all... always across the street from a higher security prison or penitentiary. So when there's a riot, the guys at the camp can go across to the prison and do the cooking and the laundry and the mopping while everybody's on lockdown, right? So I go across the street to the prison. I said, I'm John Kiriakou, here to turn myself in. The guy's like, okay, just walk through the metal detector. And I walk through the metal detector. And then he said, okay, let's go. We walk out, and instead of going across the street to the camp, he starts leading me around to the back of the prison. And I said, no, I'm supposed to be at the camp across the street. And he goes, not according to my paperwork, you're not. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're going to prison.
What?
So now Apple and Android are better.
What happened?
Now Apple and Android messaging is better together.
RCS, yeah, but it's not the same.
You can add or remove from group chat now, and you can react to chat.
Yeah, it's not the same as complete iMessage, but it's better.
Can't wait to eat KFC and cakes.
What the fuck?
Cake for Christmas.
My friend. Like with the guard towers and the
Razor wire?
Yeah, the double fences and the razor wire. And I told myself, take it easy. There's nothing you can do. If you raise a stink, they're going to put you in solitary. So I didn't say anything. So he takes me to this processing area. And they give you a uniform and a sheet and a pillow and a roll of toilet paper and a bath towel, right? This little stack of stuff.
Right.
And they take your picture for a badge. And the guy just says, follow me. I'm sitting there for 40 minutes. Finally, the guy just says, follow me. And he takes me to a cell. And he says, that bunk's yours. And then as he's walking out, he turns around and he says, by the way, if anybody walks into your cell uninvited, that's an act of aggression. And he walks away. I'm like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? I've been here 40 minutes, now I'm going to get my ass kicked. Right? So I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, you have lived in far worse places than Loretto, Pennsylvania, right? Like, there's nobody in this prison more dangerous than the people I've been working with. And I'm including my former colleagues in that. So I thought, you're trained for this. You can handle this. Just do what the CIA trained you to do. Sure enough, 2 guys walk in. Just walk in. And I jumped up out of my seat and I put my fist up and I go, what the fuck do you want? Right? I'm trying to be as tough as I can. One of them says, take it easy. Now, the one had this enormous swastika tattooed on his neck. It took up the entire front of his neck, right?
Wow.
And the other one had fuck you tattooed on his eyelids. So every time he blinked, it said fuck you. So I'm standing there with my fists up. He goes, are you the new guy? And I go, yeah. And he goes, are you a fag? And I go, no. He goes, are you a rat? And I said, no, I'm not a rat. I didn't have anybody else in my case. And he goes, are you a chomo? I go, I don't know what that word means. He goes, chomo, child molester. I go, no, I'm not a fucking child molester. And he goes, okay, you can sit with the Aryans in the cafeteria. And I go, oh, okay, thanks. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm with the Aryans now. Great. So they walk out. Not too long after, this black guy walks in. And I mean, this guy was just 200 pounds of knotted, rippling muscle, right? And he's holding a newspaper. So he walks in, and he's huge. He walks in, and I jump up again. I go, what do you want? And he goes, take it easy. And very gently, he hands me the paper. And it's the Nation of Islam newspaper. And, you know, in prison, the Nation of Islam isn't a religion so much as it's a gang, right? There's an article about me on the front of this newspaper. And Louis Farrakhan, of all friggin' people, calls me a hero of the Muslim people for standing up for Muslim human rights. So he says, I just want to tell you, you're not going to have any trouble with us. And I said, okay, appreciate it. So he walks away. It turned out that 4 of my 5 cellmates were members of Mexican drug cartels, like all of them. Norteños, Borrachos, Mexican Mafia. These were bad dudes. One of them says to me one day, are you educated? And I said, yeah. He said, could you write my appeal? I said, I'm not a lawyer. He goes, yeah, but you said you're educated. I said, yeah, sure, I'll write your appeal. How hard could it be? Half the lawyers I know are, dopes anyway.
Yeah.
So I wrote his appeal. He was totally guilty. He wasn't going to get out, but everybody writes an appeal. So
Virgilum.
Oh, it's the chicken.
So, he told all the other Mexicans that I wrote his appeal and that I didn't charge him anything. It never even occurred to me to charge him anything. The currency in prison is bags of mackerel, right?
Mackerel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like one of these silver foil bags of mackerel. You know, you see the tuna in the grocery store, like a bag of tuna.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mackerel costs $1 at the commissary. So everything is in. You buy
I
things.
can't believe I'm surprised they actually have mackerel.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It smells just to high heaven. Yeah. But anyway, so the Mexicans left me alone, and then finally, and this sort of set the tone for the rest of my time in prison. My brother called me right before I left for prison, and he said, "Listen, you're going to FCI Loretto. I got to tell you." He goes, "There's a guy there that you really need to stay away from. His name is, I'm not going to say his name. He's the boss of the Gambino family, right? And you know the Gambinos, they're one of the 5 families. This guy was in on 18 murder charges, right? He's the one who replaced John Gotti when Gotti was pinched. So he's like, stay away from him. He's a very bad, dangerous guy." Well, when I got there, I would see him walking around the yard. He was tiny. He was like 5'4", but surrounded by these gigantic bodyguards, like half a dozen of them. So I'm sitting in my cell one day, reading the newspaper, and I see movement out of the corner of my eye. So I turn and look, and it's one of the bodyguards. We used to call him Stupid Tony because his eyes were crossed. So it's Stupid Tony, and he goes, hey.
Was he actually stupid?
Yeah, he was really
Was
stupid. Yeah. The guy was going nowhere in life. He goes, hey, the boss wants to see you. And I go, he wants to see me? And he goes, yeah, let's go. Like that. So I jump up thinking, shit. Like, I've avoided this guy for 4 months, and now he's summoning me. So we go all the way to the other side of the prison. We go to his room, and it's full of guys. Hangers-on, wannabes. The guy, the boss, is sitting in a chair. There's another guy on his knees, clipping the boss's toenails. Utterly disgusting. And then when he finishes, the boss gets up, brushes his teeth. There's a little sink there. He brushes his teeth, and he spits, and the spit goes all around the sink, right? Well, right behind him, there's a guy sleeping on the top bunk of the bed, and he punches the bed, and he goes, hey, get up. Clean his shit up, he says. The guy says, you got it, boss. He jumps out of bed, cleans up all the spit. Well, I'm standing in the doorway this whole time. So I go, excuse me, did you want to see me? He goes, sit down. So I go and sit down, and I'm like practically shaking. I'm so nervous. And he goes, you the CIA guy? And I said, I am. You write a book? I said, I did. Your book do good? I said, actually, I did very well. I made number 5 on the New York Times bestsellers list. And he goes, you're going to write my book. And I said, oh, is that what this is? Well, what do you have in mind? He goes, I'm going to tell you stories, and you're going to write my book. I said, okay, well, let's think about this for a minute. You know, I said, most of the books of this genre are written by rats. And I said, they spend the first half of the book talking about all the cool things they did, and the second half of the book, they try to justify why they turned rat. And I said, you're definitely not a rat, and you probably shouldn't talk about the cool things you've done. And he looks at me, and he nods, and he goes, hadn't thought of that. Never mind. But from that day, I was invited to every Italian dinner. They had a crooked guard on payroll. He would bring us pork loin and wine for the marsala sauce and fresh mushrooms and tomatoes and all the pasta we needed for the kitchen. And I gained 30 pounds in prison.
Holy shit.
I gained 30 pounds in prison. And then we actually stayed in touch afterwards.
Is he still in there?
No, he's out, which leads me to another story. I had been out for 3 years, and around 7:30 one evening, my doorbell rings. And my youngest, I have 5 kids, but my youngest was little at the time. He was like 4.
Busy guy.
Yeah, I can't keep my hands to myself. So he runs to the door, and he opens the door before I can get there, and I hear this sugary, sweet voice. And he goes, hi, is your daddy home? And I thought, you motherfuckers. So I go to the door, and I said, may I help you? I was like actively rude, and it's not my nature to be rude. The guy goes, hi, Mr. Kiriakou, I'm Special Agent Smith with the FBI, and this is my colleague, Special Agent Jones. And I said, you guys have balls coming here. You know I'm represented by counsel. And he goes,
Huh?
Come here. You remember what happened at the end of Sandman? I told you, when I'm home, they don't care about you.
Excuse me?
All about money. You remember that?
Oh, no, Mr. Kiriakou, it's not about your case. You see, it's about another issue. We know that when you were at Loretto, you were friends with Peter the Rabbit. I said, so? Well, you know, Pete got out. He's home now. I said, yeah, good for Pete. Well, Mr. Kiriakou, we have reason to believe that Pete's taken over leadership of the Gambino crime family. And I go, and you want me to rat out a 5 families boss? Get off my property. And I closed the door. I called my attorney. He called me back 20 minutes later, and he's like, I don't know what they were thinking, but they're not going to bother you again.
Jesus Christ, man. That's fucking terrifying. Because even if you don't rat them out,
Yeah.
these guys will probably use your name
Exactly.
to try to get this guy.
Exactly.
And that not only implicates you, it implicates your whole family.
He called me, I'm going to say, it's exactly.
The mob boss guy?
Yeah, the mob boss. He called me 3 years ago, and he said, hey, he goes, Anthony's out. Anthony was this guy, he was also a Gambino.
Yeah.
That we really liked. I liked Anthony. He was the last one of our group of friends to be released. And Anthony was also the last one to be transferred to our prison from a maximum security penitentiary to a medium to a low. So I was sitting at the baseball field out in the yard, sitting with him when he first arrived. And poor Anthony, I mean, he was dumb. He was nice, but dumb as a stone. And I said to him, so Anthony, you mind if I ask you how much time you have? He goes, I got 20. I go, 20 years? And he goes, yeah, I got a long one. I said, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. You mind if I ask you, what did you do? And he goes, my crime was organized in nature. I said, right, I got it. He goes, yeah, my friend found himself on fire. I said, right, yeah, 20 years. Jesus Christ.
And he's out now.
He's out now.
So is it part of like a conspiracy case or a RICO case?
Yeah, they're all Rico cases. All.
God.
Yeah, Rico's real.
That's just crazy.
So Anthony got out, and the boss called me. He's like, hey,
kicked Vivi. She was in my way. Excuse me?
By far, we have 4% of the world's population and 25% of the world's disease. And frankly, the FBI doesn't have any subpoena authority or seizure authority on this thing, so that makes it nicer too. It's blockchain based, and it's completely and totally financed by crowdfunding, small donations, $5, $10, $50. They've repeatedly turned down major investors, repeatedly. And so, it's a little proud to be.
Is it on Twitter or
Yeah.
Instagram or Twitter?
Yes, I'm smiling because we try not to say the word Twitter,
Oh, okay.
just because they're in competition, the big gorilla, 800 gorilla.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Twitter without the algorithms and with transparency.
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds good.
it's panquake.com.
Okay. Yeah. Didn't something happen recently with Consortium?
Yes.
Dude, what happened with that?
Yeah, so PayPal froze Consortium
That's
News's
what it
accounts.
was, that's what it was.
And not only did they freeze the account, they seized the $9,300 we had in the account on payday, no less. They wouldn't tell us why. And so the executive editor, Joe Luria, was able to get through to a human being at PayPal. He said, "Why did you guys do this?" "Oh, you violated our terms of agreement." He said, "What violation?" There was no violation. And they finally admitted that there was nobody who complained. They just did this on their own. And finally they admitted that we weren't anti-Russia enough in our editorials.
You weren't anti-Russia enough.
Can you imagine that?
Who said this?
PayPal.
PayPal.
Yeah. So we, all of us who write for Consortium News wrote about this and published in other outlets to try to spread the word as widely as we could. And we've got on the board of Consortium News, we've got people like Chris Hedges, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner. We have an Academy Award nominated documentary producer. We've got like legit people. These aren't nuts, lunatics, down with QAnon. These are legitimate people respected in their fields. And so we put out the word that not only did they freeze the account, they seized all of our money. And we said we're going to join this class action suit that's already been filed against PayPal in the Northern District of California. And as soon as we said that we were going to join the class action suit, they released all of our money back to us.
Wow.
But they told us that we're permanently banned from PayPal.
That's so fucking bonkers, man.
That's crazy.
That's so bonkers. You weren't anti-Russian enough.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I love writing for Consortium News, I actually work for the Russians, right? My show is with the Sputnik Network. But one of the things that I insisted when they offered me this job was language in my contract. I said, look, I can talk about any issue that I want to talk about. I can criticize any person that I want to criticize, including them. And on the
That was her agreement with Sputnik.
Sputnik.
And for people who don't know Sputnik.
Sputnik is the Russian government's official radio.
Okay.
So it's like Voice of America.
Okay.
for us.
Okay.
So on the day of the Russian invasion, the way I opened my show is I said, I unreservedly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I believe this is a violation of international law. It's a violation of human rights, and I urge the Russian military to destroy it. And so I opened the show, and I have guests on and criticize the Russians.
Turn off the lights.
Get away!
I said,
Turn off the fucking lights.
Turn it off! Just get away.
But I understand why the Russians felt they needed to cross the border. That doesn't mean I like it or agree with it. It's just that I understand it.
Right. And Sputnik aired all the stuff even if it goes against the government's narrative.
Yeah.
Because everything that you hear anywhere is that that's not what it's like in Russia.
Right.
Everything in Russia
Right.
is tailored to what the government wants you to hear. It's all propaganda.
CNN did a story about my show a couple of weeks ago, and they said that I was weakening democracy. Can you imagine?
You were weakening democracy in the United States.
Because I'm a former CIA officer. I should be standing up for my country, not working for the Russians. And I said, yeah. I said to this Nick, whatever his name was, the reporter, I said, are you going to put food on my table? Are you going to put my kids through college? Where was CNN when I got out of prison and I needed a helping hand? So don't tell me about weakening democracy.
Well, that's weird because CNN hires, I think, more ex-Pentagon officials
Exactly.
than any other company. They pay.
The last 4 CIA officials are either or CIA directors are at either CNN or MSNBC.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? About all these ex-Pentagon officials, CIA officials?
Scandalous. Where's the separation? You know, it's like CNN, and MSNBC, and Fox. Same thing. They're all just adjuncts of the national security state. It's crazy.
That's so wild. So fucking wild. Well, man, I don't know what the answer is, but that seems bonkers, and that's the world we live in.
Yes, it's been a real learning lesson.
And where can people listen to your daily show again?
Almost nowhere. We've been banned from YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Spotify, and TuneIn.
What?
Yep.
You've been banned from Spotify?
I'm weakening democracy.
How the frick did you get banned from every single one
Every
of these?
platform. So the only way to listen to it now is at SputnikNews.com. We went from 38,000 daily listeners to 500.
No fucking way.
Yep.
That is totally fucking wild.
38,000 to 500. Which is what they wanted to do. They don't want anybody who has an alternative viewpoint. Otherwise, democracy may get weakened.
Because what are you saying? What are you saying to weaken democracy? What specifically are they pointing to?
I can tell you. Every Thursday, I have a 30-minute segment called Criminal Injustice. And I have a journalist who focuses on criminal justice issues, and a guy who's the head of a group called the Human Rights Defense Center. They publish prison legal news and criminal legal news magazines. And so we talk every week for 30 minutes about crooked judges, crooked prosecutors, the death penalty, cops getting arrested for raping prisoners and selling drugs and stuff like that.
Wow.
And I get it all out of the Washington Post and the New York Times, but that's weakening democracy.
Holy shit. Well, this episode's definitely gonna get banned from YouTube. Oh my god.
Funny thing too is everybody at the station on Twitter, they got this tag that says Russian sponsored media, right? I have 50,000 Twitter followers and I don't have a tag. I don't know why. Knock on wood, I don't want one. I'm not Russian sponsored media. I have one.
Explain this tag. This tag is implemented by Twitter?
Yeah.
So Twitter put a flag on these accounts that says it's a Russian.
Every single one of my colleagues, I'm going to show you. Oops.
Maybe you can pull it up on the TV on the screen.
Sure.
What's one of the colleagues' names?
Lee Stranahan.
Lee Stranahan on Twitter.
Yeah, Lee Stranahan.
Okay. I gotta see this.
Yeah.
Because I know that Twitter implemented tags on posts that are created by automated bots. I had this guy here the other day who he has a bot that posts.
Russian state-affiliated media.
So he didn't put that on there?
No, sir. Twitter did. About a week after the Russians invaded Ukraine.
Well, click on that. What does that go to?
Oh, I didn't even know you could click on it.
About government and state-affiliated media account labels on Twitter. Labels on state-affiliated accounts provide additional context about accounts that are controlled by certain official representatives of governments, state-affiliated media entities, and individuals associated with those entities. The label appears on the profile page of a relevant Twitter account. Wow.
Look, and they put the flag. These labels include a small icon of a flag to signal the account status. Oh,
That's pretty fucking crazy. I never knew about this.
terrible.
I never knew about this. Go back to his profile again. Russian state-affiliated media.
With the Russian flag.
Now, did he put? So he didn't put the fucking Russian flag
No,
on his name?
Twitter put the Russian flag.
Because one of the weird things about people on Twitter is, like, I always become suspicious of somebody on Twitter when they have the fucking American flag emoji next to their name.
Right. Right.
I think they're some sort of, like, either they're right-wing or they're just some sort of fucking antagonist on Twitter.
Yes.
Who's just trying to get attention. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like a provocateur.
Agreed. Uh-huh. Agreed.
That's fucking bananas. I don't know how I feel about that. I didn't know that was a thing. I wonder what Elon will do about that if he gets Twitter.
Yeah, good question. Good question.
Jeez, and that's another thing about.
That was Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance putting aside politics for a moment this week to attend the memorial service on the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Like most Americans, I remember exactly where I was on that September day. After being evacuated from the State Department, I walked to the Potomac River where I could see smoke pouring from the Pentagon after a hijacked jet tore through the building. But what I did not know until I got a call from the CIA just a few weeks ago was that a young Navy officer nearly died in the Pentagon that day when he years earlier was on a Navy ship that launched the first direct attacks on Al-Qaeda, eventually joined the small team that would finally find the mastermind of 9/11, Osama bin Laden, the man who killed nearly 3,000 Americans and almost killed Kevin Schaefer as well. It is a remarkable story that only the CIA has told until now.
We met at the Pentagon Memorial on a cloudless day, much like that September day in 2001, when Kevin Schaefer was inside the Pentagon's Navy Command Center watching the horror in New York unfold.
It's all the same graphene. Very distinctly known for doing some audible gas throughout our command center space.
So this looks like it is some sort of a concerted effort to attack the World Trade Center that is underway.
That was 9:03 a.m. Shot the Hezbollah, but no indication the Pentagon would be named. But 34 minutes later, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 went through the building.
Felt the blast, the initial blast felt like it came from behind me, and it threw me to the ground, and it was on fire, badly burned, and everything around me was blown to bits, and it was a flames.
Everyone on the plane got Instantly, 125 killed inside the Pentagon, 42 of them in the command center of Schiffer.
I remember being, putting myself out, extinguishing flames, putting my head, sitting my head, and feeling really slick. I think what was probably being housed with jet fuel and different things, and really no one around me, left around me. And so in that moment was when I realized that I had to fight and climb my way out, or else I wasn't going to make it.
Running through darkness and dense black smoke, Schaefer saw a sliver of daylight.
So I felt my adrenaline kick in, and as I rushed across that space, to the daylight that was shining through the threshold on that hole, and I crossed the threshold, orange behind me, with relative safety on me.
And there in the light, Sergeant First Class Steve Fortman.
He found himself there just as I was walking through that threshold, and our eyes met, and for a brief moment, and I called out to him, screamed out to him as best I could, I need help, he needs some help, and he took me and laid me onto a maintenance cart and rear off CPA.
Nearly half of the then 29-year-old's body was seared by deep burns, including his arms and hands.
And he just cut off the wedding band I wore on my left hand, my nail kind of clasp ring that I wore on my right hand. Both of them meant so much to me, there was no way I was going to let him cut them off. And so I yelled, stop, and was able to muster up my will and strength and get my wedding band off and my clasp ring off, and I handed them off to the nurse nearby. And I thought, now we can get on with saving my life, and this is my last conscious memory of my life.
When he woke up, his skin and lungs charred from fire and jet fuel, the pain was nearly unbearable.
The pain of the burns was beyond description. I likened them to the color white, and white, hot pain is really the only way to describe it.
Pain and infections, doctors were not sure he would survive.
One morning in October, succumbed to my injuries and flatlined twice. But they brought me back each time, and I bounced back stronger, but they really had to.
The White House said today that a broad Chinese hacking operation had infiltrated at least 8 American telecommunication companies, and that none of them have managed to remove these Chinese hackers from their systems. Nick Schifrin has been following this all and joins us now. So Nick, what did the White House say today?
The White House gave new details on what is believed to be the largest hack on American telecommunications firms in U.S. history. As you said, Chinese hackers infiltrated at least 8 communications firms in the United States, and over the last 1 to 2 years, quote, dozens of telecommunications companies across Asia and Europe, and the hack was ongoing. Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technology, Andy Neuberger, said today.
The affected companies are all responding. Right now, we do not believe any attack fully removed the Chinese actors from these networks. So there is a risk of ongoing compromises to communications. Until U.S. companies address the cybersecurity gaps, the Chinese are likely to maintain their access.
Today, intelligence officials were on the Hill briefing all 100 senators in a classified hearing about Chinese hackers known as Salt Typhoon, and our Lisa Desjardins caught up with Texas Republican John Cornyn.
The Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated the telecommunication systems here in the United States in a dramatic and unprecedented sort of way, and it's a subject of tremendous concern. I'm sure you're going to hear more about it because it affects a lot of people, and not just in this country, but around the world.
Yesterday, Jeff, a senior FBI official admitted the Bureau still did not know how deeply the Chinese hackers had penetrated, even though the Bureau had been investigating since the spring. It could take years to know the true scope of the hack.
Do we know though who has been targeted?
Intelligence officials described 3 baskets, or 3 groups of targets, essentially. Number 1, a large number of users whose phone metadata was stolen. Number 2, a small group of individuals whose audio calls and text messages were specifically targeted and successfully intercepted. Number 3, the portal that law enforcement uses to submit court orders to telecommunications and internet service providers. And I want to keep that list up for the moment. On the first group, whose metadata was stolen, a senior administration official said today it was, quote, a large number of Americans but would not provide the number, but it had a, quote, regional focus, suggesting it was designed to find members of the second group, whose calls were intercepted, including senior members of the Trump and Harris campaigns. A former intelligence official described to me, Jeff, that this is so hard because these are incredibly sophisticated state actors with limitless budget and limitless time. They are extraordinarily difficult to detect because they enter networks with stolen credentials so as not to set off alarm bells, and if they detect any surveillance by the Americans, they simply stop moving. They can sit there and take as long as it takes, therefore avoiding detection.
And how has China responded to all of this?
In a statement, Chinese embassy spokesman Liu Pengyu told me that the U.S. claims were, quote, disinformation, and he continued, quote, China firmly opposes and combats all kinds of cyber attacks. The U.S. needs to stop its own cyber attacks against other countries and refrain from using cybersecurity to smear and slander China. U.S., Jeff, is believed to conduct the same surveillance around the world, and I do use that term surveillance. U.S. officials use that term because this is not designed, as far as they can tell, to destroy any critical infrastructure. It is instead designed to conduct espionage and collect information. No signs that any of this is being leaked online. As for solutions, Neuberger said today the only solution was to require companies to meet minimum cybersecurity guidelines. Right now, those guidelines are